The orbital shipyard called Gyeongbok hung against the blackness, a tangle of metal and light tethered to a tired, brown earth. From the observation deck, Lee Jae-min did not see beauty. She saw a cage. A century ago, the galactic hegemony had arrived. They did not come with bombs and fire. They came with gentle, unbreakable hands. They offered peace, order, and a place in their grand community. Humanity, exhausted from its own wars, accepted. Now, Earth was a quaint garden and a workshop. Humans were known for their delicate art, their complex music, their skill in refining minerals for others. They were not known for threat. Chi-Min turned from the window. Her workspace was a cluttered module buried deep in the shipyard's non-critical sector, labeled Auxiliary Materials Testing. It was the perfect disguise. The hegemony monitored everything. Their sensors watched for the energy signatures of rebellion, plasma coils charging, antimatter containment fields, fusion pulses. Human technology was legally capped at level 2, suitable for intrasystem freighters and atmospheric processors. Anything more was a violation, punishable by the withdrawal of hegemony protection, a death sentence for a planet reliant on imported food and medicine. The door slid open with a sigh. Park Dae-hyun entered, carrying 2 cups of bitter, synthetic tea. He was older, his hair more gray than black, his hands scarred from a lifetime of engineering. He was Ji-min's teacher, her partner in crime, and the closest thing she had to family. The latest audit logs are clean, Dae-hyun said, handing her a cup. The hegemony overseer, Counselor Antel, is pleased with our ceramic output. He says our vases will grace the halls of the Tai Rin nesting spires. Ji-min took the cup but did not drink. They see vases. They don't see the molecular alignment. They don't see the superconducting lattice we baked into the glaze. That is the point, Dae-hyun said softly. They look at our hands to see if we hold an energy weapon. They do not think to check if we are holding a stone. Project Jungwon Righteous Fist was the stone. While the galaxy marveled at shield technology that could dissipate the fury of a star and weapons that turned matter into light, Ji-min's team had looked backward. They revisited the brutal, simple physics of kinetic energy. A thing going very, very fast. The hegemony's majestic warships were like beautiful, elaborate lanterns designed to handle heat and radiation. What would happen if someone simply threw a rock? The answer was in the core of the module. It wasn't sleek. It was ugly. A series of massive magnetic coils wrapped around a barrel made from scavenged freighter hull plating. Its power source was not a stolen hegemony cell, but a bank of capacitors slowly, secretly charged over years, siphoned from the shipyard's own public grid in microscopic, untraceable increments. Its ammunition was not refined explosives, but solid iron, pure, simple, dense iron mined in secret from the moon. "The test is ready?" a voice said from a console. It was Kim Seok, a young analyst with a quiet face and anxious eyes. He worked in hegemony logistics on a different station, but his heart was here. He was their early warning system. The target? Ji-min asked. Dae-hyun brought up a star map. A blinking red icon marked a derelict hegemony surveillance probe, catalogued as debris. It was a dead thing, a leftover from an earlier survey, tumbling in the void halfway to Mars. To the hegemony, it was garbage. To Project Jungwon, it was perfect. It's still broadcasting its old identification signal, Dae-hyun said. If by some miracle they notice it's gone, they'll assume it finally broke apart. Ji-min nodded. This was not a declaration of war. It was a whisper in a soundproof room. A test of their science and their secrecy. The sequence began. There was no dramatic countdown. In the control pit, technicians Yu Jin, Wei Min, Song Ho murmured to each other, fingers dancing over panels that officially controlled furnace temperatures. On the main screen, a targeting reticule settled over the tiny, pixelated image of the probe. Capacitors at 100%. Yujin said. Coil sequence primed, said Bei-min. Launch tube is clear. Song-hwa finished. Chi-min looked at Bei-hyun. He had risked everything for this dream. He believed they could build a deterrent, a single sharp thorn to make the galactic giants hesitate before stepping on them. Ji-min believed they needed to learn how to make a sword. She reached for the final authorization key, a physical switch hidden under a console lid. Bei-hyun placed his hand over hers for a moment, his grip firm. Then he nodded. She flipped the switch. The sound was not what anyone expected. It was not a whoosh or a roar. It was a series of deafening, metallic clangs, like the world's largest hammer striking the world's largest anvil, each one a fraction of a second apart. The entire module shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. Lights flickered. In the barrel, magnetic fields of incredible power pulsed in perfect sequence, each one accelerating the 2-meter iron slug faster than the last. There was no fiery exhaust, just a concussive blast of superheated air as the projectile left the tube and vanished into the vacuum. On the screen, a timer started. The distance was vast. They waited. No one breathed. The silence after the clanging was heavy and complete. Then, the timer hit 0. The screen showing the probe did not show an explosion. One moment, the small angular shape of the probe was there, tumbling slowly. The next moment, it was a blur of static, then gone. A second, wider angle sensor caught it. A tiny, silent flash of white light. It appeared and vanished in less than a frame. No expanding fireball. No glowing debris. The slug, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, had delivered so much kinetic energy so fast that the probe did not explode. It vaporized. It was converted instantly from solid matter to superheated plasma, which then dissipated into the cold. The room was silent. Someone let out a shaky breath. Telemetry confirms complete target annihilation. Song-hwa whispered, her voice full of awe and fear. Impact velocity. Within 0.7% of projection. They had done it. They had harnessed a force so primitive the galaxy had forgotten it. A railgun. A giant slingshot. Bei-hyun slumped into a chair, looking suddenly very old. It works, he said, the words hanging in the air. Ji-min stared at the empty spot on the screen where the probe had been. A cold, hard certainty settled in her stomach. This changed everything and nothing. The hegemony still ruled. Their ships still glided through the solar system like graceful, untouchable birds. But now, hidden in the dark, humanity had just thrown a stone. They had proven they could hit a target from an impossible distance with a force no shield was built to stop. Kim Seok's voice came over the comm. Strained. I'm scrubbing the local sensor logs from the hegemony feed now. So far, their network is marking the event as a minor debris collision. Automated system. No flags. No flags. The rulers of the galaxy, in their infinite arrogance, had felt the slightest of tremors through the soles of their thrones. They had mistaken it for nothing. They had not heard the whisper. But Ji-min had, and she knew a whisper could become a shout. She looked at the ugly, magnificent weapon on her screens. It was no longer just a test. It was a key, and she was beginning to see the lock it was meant to open. The event was logged by the Galactic Hegemony's automated monitoring network as incident number 7742 Alpha, minor debris collision. A piece of space junk, likely a fragment of an old comet, had struck a derelict probe. The system processed the data, noted the object's total destruction, and filed the report in the vast, silent archives of things that did not matter. The probe was obsolete. Its loss was 0. No energy signatures accompanied the impact. Therefore, no action was required. Kim Seok knew this was wrong. He sat at his station in the Logistics and Resource Allocation Division on Hegemony Orbital Platform Serenity. His job was to monitor the flow of materials to and from annexed Sector 8897, the human solar system. It was dull work. He tracked shipments of luxury foods for the Hegemony staff, exports of human-made artworks, and imports of vital medicines for Earth. His overseers, the avian-like Tyrin, like Counselor Mtel, viewed the role as perfect for a human, simple, detail-oriented, and utterly non-strategic. But Seok had been given a gift by Park Dae-hyeon years ago, a gift of paranoia. They see the forest, Seok, Dae-hyeon had said. They never learned to count the trees. So Seok counted. He cross-referenced. He noticed patterns. When the automated alert for incident number 7742 Alpha flashed on a secondary screen, he almost ignored it. But a habit made him pull the raw sensor data. The collision was listed as kinetic, standard, but the energy estimate, buried in a submenu, made his blood run cold. The number was not huge by Hegemony standards, but for a random chunk of rock, it was off by several orders of magnitude. To vaporize a Hegemony probe, even an old one, required immense force. A natural rock would have shattered on impact, not delivered all its energy at once. More importantly, the vector was wrong. The impact trajectory did not align with any known debris cloud in the area. It came from a vector that pointed back, not to the asteroid belt, but to a region of space near Earth, a region containing the shipyard Gyeongbok. His heart began to hammer against his ribs. He quickly minimized the data. He glanced around the softly lit, organic-feeling chamber. His Tyrin supervisor, KLVIK, was across the room, preening his feathers and chatting on a comlink. He paid no attention to Seok. Why would he? The human was a piece of the furniture. Seok's mind raced. This was Dae-hyeon's work. It had to be. Project Jungwon. They had tested their weapon. And they had left a fingerprint. A tiny, almost invisible fingerprint, but it was there. The Hegemony's arrogance was their shield. They believed no human could possibly create a weapon that would register as more than a trivial blip. Their sensors were calibrated for the thunder of starship engines and the crackle of plasma cannons. They were listening for a roar. What Dae-hyeon and Ji-min had made was a silent, focused clang. It didn't register on the right scales, but Seok knew the Hegemony was not stupid. It was complacent. If the anomaly was noticed by the wrong algorithm, or if a board analyst dug deeper during a routine audit, questions would be asked. Those questions would lead to scans. And Hegemony deep scans could peel a shipyard open like a piece of fruit. He had to warn them. But direct communication was impossible. All channels were monitored. He had a secured, encrypted datapad for his work, but its outgoing links were filtered and recorded. He thought of the old code Dae-hyeon had given him, a string of numbers and a frequency. For emergencies only, Dae-hyeon had said, his face grim. It is a shout down a deep well. It might be heard. It will certainly make ripples. Taking a steadying breath, Seok called up a routine logistics report on his main screen. On his personal, non-network notepad, he typed a message in simple code they had agreed upon years before. Audit likely. Anomaly in debris collision data. Vector anomalous. Energy signature mismatch. Recommend cleanliness. He saved it as a plain text file. Then he pretended to get up for a hydration break. He walked calmly to the date archival terminal, a machine used to dump non-critical logs onto physical storage crystals for long-term backup. It had a small, outdated external port. His hands were steady as he plugged in his notepad and transferred the tiny text file onto a crystal log. corrupting the file label to make it look like a fragment of old human weather data. It was a needle in a haystack. But if the hegemony ever audited the terminal's port logs, they would see the connection, a final risky step. He requested a standard logistical update packet to be sent to the Gongbak shipyard, routine list of expected food and water deliveries. He submitted the request. Klovik, without looking, waved a taloned hand in approval. As the system compiled the packet, Seok used an old, nearly forgotten override code Daehyun had discovered years ago, a flaw in the hegemony's otherwise perfect system. It allowed a single, non-executable file to be attached to a logistics packet as a cultural supplement. He attached the corrupted storage crystal log. The system processed it. A green light flashed. Packet sent. Seok returned to his station, his mouth dry. He had done it. He had sent a shout down the well. Now, he could only wait and hope the ripples reached the right people before the hegemony noticed the splash dot back on the Gongbak. In the hidden module, the mood was tense. The euphoria of the successful test had faded, replaced by the grim reality of what came next. Ji-min was reviewing coil stress tolerances when a priority alert chimed on an isolated terminal, the one linked to the dummy logistics. Receiver. Daehyun opened the packet. He saw the expected delivery list. And he saw the corrupted file. His face, usually so calm, tightened. He isolated the file, ran the decryption sequence. The message from Seok appeared on the screen. He read it aloud. His voice flat. Chi-min stopped her work. How specific is the anomaly? Specific enough, Daehyun said. If they look, they will find it. Seok has bought us time, not safety. Ji-min walked to the main viewport, looking out at the distant stars. They will send someone? Not a fleet. Not at first. They will send an auditor. Like Intel. They will come smiling, asking to check our power converters. And we will show them our beautiful vases, Daehyun said, a trace of bitterness in his voice. It won't be enough, Ji-min said, turning to face him. Her eyes were hard. A deterrent only works if the other side knows it exists. Right now, they think they are coming to check on a child playing with the forbidden spark. They do not know we have built a fire. Daehyun shook his head. If we reveal it, they will destroy us. They will scorch Earth from orbit. Maybe, Ji-min said. Or maybe they will see the fire and realize we are not children. Maybe they will finally talk to us, not just talk at us. Their argument was old, but now it had a deadline. Seok's warning was a timer, ticking down. They had to decide, hide their weapon deeper and hope the hegemony's glance was shallow, or prepare to reveal its existence in a way that could not be ignored. In that moment. The Gyeongbok was no longer just a shipyard. It had become the quiet, dark center of a coming storm. Two humans, surrounded by cold metal and the silent proof of their defiance, faced a choice that would decide the fate of their world. The galaxy's rulers continued their serene, untroubled rule, their crowns sitting comfortably on their brows, unaware that the first, faint crack had just appeared in the foundation of their throne. A week later, the hegemony arrived. It was not a grand invasion fleet, but something almost more insulting, a compliance audit squadron. 3 ships. The lead vessel was the battlecruiser Splendor of Tyrin, a graceful, terrifying thing that looked like a bird of prey carved from pearl and silver. It was escorted by 2 smaller, needle-shaped frigates. They slid into the edge of the solar system with no fanfare, as if they owned the space they moved through. Which, in their view, they did. On the bridge of the human corvette Jeonju, Commander Choi Yuna watched the symbols appear on her tactical screen. Her ship, one of the few armed vessels permitted to humanity, was a toy by comparison. Its weapons were low-power lasers for clearing microdebris. Its shields could stop radiation and little else. Her orders had come from Earth Gov, transmitted through tight beam after Seok's warning. Cooperate, observe, and do nothing to provoke. A direct communication request came through. The face that filled her screen was avian, sharp-feathered, with large, dark eyes that held no warmth. Counselor Antel. Commander Choi, he said, his voice a melodic warble that somehow still sounded condescending. We are here for a routine inspection of the Gyeongbok orbital facilities. You will escort us in. Please prepare for a personal audience aboard the Splendor. It was not a request. Yuna nodded, her face a mask of professional calm. Of course, Counselor. We are honored by your visit. The words tasted like ash. The journey inward was silent. The Splendor moved with an effortless grace that made the Jongjo feel clunky and crude. Yuna thought of the messages from Park Dae-hyeon, cryptic but clear. The weather is changing. Wear a thick coat. She didn't know the details of Project Jongwon, only that it was Dae-hyeon and Ji-min's life work, and that the hegemony could not find it. Her shuttle docked with the Splendor. The difference was jarring. The hegemony ship's interior was warm, filled with soft, organic curves and gentle light. The air smelled of a sweet, foreign scent. It was a place of beauty and absolute power. She was led to an observation lounge, not a war room. Mattel was there, sipping from a crystalline glass. Commander, he said, not offering her a seat. Your people's output has been satisfactory. However, our sensors had detected minor energy fluctuations from the Gyeongbok. Irregularities in your power grid. We are here to offer our technical assistance. Yuna kept her hands clasped behind her back. Fluctuations, Counselor? Our systems have been running normally. We would be grateful for hegemony expertise, of course. She played the part of the humble vassal perfectly. Mattel's large eyes blinked slowly. Yes, expertise. He turned to look out the vast viewport at the approaching shape of the shipyard, a jagged silhouette against the blue earth. You humans are so clever with your hands, so good at building small, intricate things. But large-scale system stability, it is a complex matter. We will help you, for your own safety. He was lying. Yuna knew it. The help would be a deep system scan that would lay every circuit, every hidden module, bare. She needed to warn the shipyard, but her comms were being monitored. She had one prearranged signal, a status update on the Jongjo's debris filters. By your leave, Counselor, she said, bowing her head slightly. I should return to my ship to prepare for your audit. Peta waved a dismissive talon. Go. We will begin our scan in 1 hour. Ensure all non-essential personnel are in safe zones. There will be bright light. Back in her shuttle, Yuna's calm shattered. Her hands trembled as she sent the coded message. Not a plea for help. A simple, factual transmission. Audit scan commencing in 1 hour. Full spectrum. It was a death sentence for the secret. And for them, on the Gyeongbok, the message was received in the hidden module. The air, already tense, turned to ice. 1 hour, Daehan said. His voice hollow. G-Min was already moving, her fingers flying over a console. We can't hide it. Not from a full hegemony deep scan. The power couplings, the capacitor banks. They'll light up like a beacon. Then we shut it down. We try to mask it as a scrap metal bay. One of the technicians, Min suggested, his voice strained. It's too late for that, Ji-min said, stopping. She looked at Dae-hyeon. He's not coming to help. He's coming to confirm a suspicion. And when he finds it, he will label it a rebellion. He will order the Splendor to reduce the shipyard to atoms. And Earth will be punished. Dae-hyeon stared at the ugly, magnificent railgun platform on the main screen. It was called Mudong now. Unbending. What is your solution, Ji-min? We cannot fight a hegemony battlecruiser. We don't fight the ship, she said, her eyes locked on the screen, showing the approaching splendor. We fight the idea. We fight the idea that we are harmless. She turned to him, her expression fierce. You wanted a deterrent. A deterrent is useless in a drawer. It has to be seen. A terrible understanding dawned on Dai-Ion's face. You want to use it. On the probe, that was one thing. This is an act of war. What is the audit he is about to perform? Ji-min shot back, her voice rising. It is an act of absolute control. It is him looking into every corner of our home, because he believes he has the right. We have only one answer. We must show him his control is an illusion. The room was silent, every technician watching them. The weight of the decision pressed down like a physical force. On the screen, the splendor of Tyrin took up position, its elegant hull turning to face the Gyeongbok. A faint, visible beam of blue light began to gather at its prow. The deep-scan Dai-Ion closed his eyes. He saw Earth, vulnerable and green. He saw a century of quiet humiliation. He saw Ji-min's fire, a fire he had helped to spark. He had always thought they could control it. Now, he had to choose between a slow death by discovery and a potential fast death by defiance. He opened his eyes and looked at Ji-min. He saw no fear in her, only a cold, determined clarity. She was right. Hiding was over. He walked to the main command station. His movements were slow, heavy. He entered his command codes. Targeting parameters, he said, his voice now firm. Single slug. Target, the splendor of Tyrin. Aim for center mass. A gasp went through the room. No one moved. Do it, Dai-Ion said. Ji-min was already at the weapons console, her earlier argument forgotten in the face of action. Coil sequence initiation. Capacitors at full. Target locked. The deep scan beam from the splendor intensified, a spear of light reaching out to touch the Gyeongbok. On the hegemony ship, Mittel would be watching, waiting for the hidden secrets to appear on his screen. On the Zhongzhou, Yuna watched, helpless, as the beam connected. It was over. They were found out. Then a new sound began. A deep, metallic groan that vibrated through the entire structure of the Gyeongbok. It was the sound of mudding powering up, drawing every stored joule of energy from its secret banks. In the module, Ji-min's hand hovered over the final trigger. She looked at Dai-Ion one last time. He gave a single, slow nod. For the unbending, she whispered, and she pressed it. The sequence began not with a roar, but with a shudder. A deep physical tremor that ran through the bones of the Gyeongbok station. It was the sound of immense power being forced into simple, brutal purpose. Magnetic coils, each the size of a ground vehicle, energized in a precise, rapid chain. Clang, a sound of pure force, like the hammer of a god striking the anvil of the void. Clang, clang, clang. Inside the hidden module, the noise was deafening. Lights swung wildly. Dust rained from the ceiling. Ji-min held onto her console, her knuckles white, her eyes fixed on the main screen. The view was from an external camera, focused on the ugly, boxy muzzle of the modem railgun. There was no flash of light, no plume of fire, just a sudden, violent blur of superheated air that exploded outward into the vacuum and then vanished. The 2-meter-long iron slug was gone, accelerated to a fraction of light speed in less than a second. On the bridge of the splendor of Tyrin, Counselor Mittel watched his deep scan screen with detached interest. The beam was piercing the Gyeongbok's outer layers, mapping power conduits and life support. He expected to see the hidden energy spike soon, the proof of human treachery. An alarm chimed, a minor one. His tactical officer, a Tyrin named Collar, glanced at a secondary display. Minor power surge from the shipyard. Kyler reported his warbled board. Structural vibration. Probably a faulty reactor stabilizer. Tell nodded. Primitive technology. So prone to failure. He was about to order the scan to focus on the energy signature when he noticed something odd on the visual feed. A strange, brief distortion in the space between the shipyard and his battlecruiser. A ripple of heat. Then nothing. On the Zhongzhou, Commander Choi Yuna saw it. One moment, the elegant, pearl-like shape of the splendor hung in the void, the blue scan beam connecting it to the shipyard like an umbilical cord. The next moment, the center of the great ship simply ceased to be. There was no explosion. No dramatic fireball tearing the vessel apart. A circular section of the Splendor's hull, 30 meters across, disappeared in a silent flash of blinding white light. One instant it was solid, polished armor. The next, it was an expanding, incandescent cloud of vaporized metal and composite. The iron slug, moving at a velocity that defied human comprehension, had punched through the hegemony ship's powerful energy shields as if they were not there. The shields were designed to absorb and dissipate energy, heat, radiation, plasma. They could not react to a solid object moving that fast. The physics were irrelevant in the face of such simple, overwhelming force. The effect inside the Splendor was instantaneous and total. The slug traveled clean through the center of the ship, exiting the other side before the first molecule of hull plating had finished reacting. But its passage was not clean. It transferred colossal kinetic energy to everything it touched. The reactor core, the bridge, the primary power conduits, all located along its path, were not just destroyed. They were disassembled at the atomic level. The released energy had nowhere to go but out. What followed the initial puncture was not a single explosion, but a rapid series of catastrophic failures. The Splendor's beautiful hull bulged, then split open along its length like overripe fruit. Internal atmosphere vented in a silent, glittering fountain of ice crystals. Secondary explosions, blooms of orange and yellow against the dark, tore the ship into 3 large, tumbling pieces, and then into 1,000 smaller ones. The blue scan beam winked out. The silence on the bridge of the Zhongzhou was absolute. Yuna could hear the hum of her own ship's life support. Her crew sat frozen, staring at the screen where the pride of the Tyrin hegemony had been. Now, there was only a spreading cloud of debris, glittering in the sunlight like cruel confetti. A static-filled transmission burst from one of the escort frigates, panic clear in the warbling Tyrin language. Then it cut off. The 2 smaller ships, realizing their invincible protector was gone, began to turn, their engines flaring as they scrambled to retreat. Back in the Gyeongbok module, the crew was just as silent. The screen showed the catastrophic result. Bei Min was being sicked into a waste bin. Songhua was praying softly, her eyes wide with terror. Park Dae-hyun slowly lowered himself into a chair, his face pale, his eyes old. He had wanted a deterrent. He had created annihilation. Only Ji-min moved. Her face was stern, wiped clean of emotion. She monitored the systems. Railgun platform intact. Coil stress within tolerable limits. Capacitor banks depleted. Recharge time, 12 hours. She spoke as if giving a weather report. Inside, a storm raged, but she locked it away. There was no time for feeling. They had crossed a line from which there was no return. Her cum crackled. It was Yuna's voice, strained but under control. Gyeongbok, this is Zhongzhou. Confirmed status. What? What was that? Ji-min opened the channel. Zhongzhou, this is Project Control. The audit has been concluded. Her voice was flat, iron. The hegemony battlecruiser Splendor of Tyrin is no longer operational. Do the escort vessels pose a threat? A pause from Yuna. They could both see the frigates turning tail, accelerating away. Negative. They are fleeing. They are. They are scared. A new, cold reality settled over everyone. The hegemony was not just powerful. It was perceived as untouchable. That perception, that crown of invincibility, had just been shattered by a lump of iron. The rulers had not just lost a ship. They had lost the unshakable belief that they could not be touched. G-Min looked at the debris cloud on the screen. They will be back, she said, to Yuna and to her own crew. And they will not come to audit. They will come to punish. Inform EarthGov. Tell them. Tell them the unbending has spoken. Now we see if the galaxy listens. Across the solar system, automated hegemony sensors, programmed to ignore minor kinetic events, were overloaded by the energy release from the Splendor's destruction. Alerts of a magnitude never before seen in this quiet annex flashed across the galactic network. On 100 worlds, in 1,000 command centers, a new, strange report appeared. A hegemony capital ship lost. Cause: extreme kinetic impact. Probability of natural cause: 0. Origin: human space. The news would travel at the speed of quantum entanglement. It would ripple through the hegemony like a seismic shock. Subjects did not destroy battlecruisers. It was not in the order of things. For a century, the galaxy's rulers had worn their crowns lightly, assured of their place. Now, for the first time, they would feel a cold draft. They would reach up, instinctively, to check if their crowns were still there. And in that moment of doubt, everything would change. The silence in the solar system was louder than any explosion. The 2 hegemony frigates had vanished, jumping to faster-than-light travel the moment they were clear. The debris field that was once the splendor of Tyrin drifted, a slowly expanding monument to impossible violence. On Earth, panic and hope warred. Governments scrambled. On the Gyeongbok, there was only exhausted dread. They had cast their stone. Now they waited for the sky to fall. It did not fall. 6 standard days passed. The galactic network, which humanity could monitor but barely interact with, buzzed with confusion. The official hegemony channels were silent on the matter, but the unofficial feeds, the whispers between species, were aflame. A hegemony battlecruiser destroyed. By humans. By a kinetic weapon. The words made no sense together. The hegemony's power was based on energy, the control of it, the magnificent display of it. This was something else. This was a primitive, brutal force from a forgotten age. On the 8th day, a ship arrived. It was not a battlecruiser. It was a small, unarmed, diplomatic barge. It requested permission to approach Earth and sent a single, clean transmission. It asked for a parley in a secure conference room on the Gyeongbok. Lee Ji-min and Park Dae-hyeon stood before a quantum link screen. They had not slept. EarthGov had insisted they be the ones to speak. They had built the key. They must face the lock. On the screen was the new hegemony emissary, a Tyrin like Mtel, but its feathers were duller, its posture less rigid. It was not named Mtel. It introduced itself as Envoy Kaval. Its voice lacked the melodic condescension. It held only a wary tension. We are here to discuss the tragic incident. Kaval began, its large eyes blinking rapidly. The audit that went wrong, Daemin stated, her voice flat. She offered no apology. A pause. Yes, the audit. The hegemony seeks clarity. The weapon you used. It was a kinetic projectile device? A railgun, Dae-hyeon said, his voice tired. Iron and magnets. Level 2 physics, essentially. Another longer pause. Kaval seemed to be consulting something off-screen. The admission that their greatest warship had been felled by such basic technology was a humiliation they were struggling to digest. The hegemony, Kaivel said carefully, is committed to galactic stability. The unprovoked destruction of a hegemony vessel is an act that demands a significant response. Here it was. The threat. Hyman leaned forward. It was not unprovoked. It was a response to an act of absolute control. Your deep scan was a violation. You came looking for an excuse to punish us. You found one. Just not the one you expected. She didn't wait for a reply. She sent a data packet. On Kaival's screen, a schematic appeared. It was not of the Mudding Railgun. It was a standard hegemony battlecruiser shield generator, the same type used on the Splendor. An animation played. A simple, blunt projectile struck the shimmering shield field. The field did not break. It parted. The projectile passed through with only a minor loss of velocity, then continued into the heart of the ship. The animation looped. Your crown, Jimin said, her words cold and precise, is a shield against energy. It is beautiful. It is powerful. But it is not armor. My people have spent a century looking up at you, studying you, making art for you. We learned what you are. You are brilliant glass. And we have learned how to throw stones. The silence from the hegemony side was total. Kaivel stared at the looping animation, the elegant vulnerability of his people's greatest advantage, laid bare by a child's lesson in physics. Deihayan spoke now, his voice softer but firm. We do not want war, Envoy. We never did. We want to renegotiate the terms of our annexation. We will share the principles of this technology with you. Kaivel's head snapped up. You would give us your weapon? No, Jimin said. We would show you its shadow. We would show you that the age of untouchable shields is over. Any species with a basic industrial base and the will to do so can build a hammer. Your shield technology is still useful against plasma, against lasers. But it is no longer absolute. The calculus of power has changed. She could see it in Kaival's eyes, the dawning, horrifying understanding. This was not just a human problem. The data of the Splendor's destruction was already leaking. On 100 subjected worlds, engineers and physicists were looking at the reports. They were looking at rocks and magnets and their own overlords. The hegemony's rule was not based on infinite armies, but on the unshakable belief in their technological supremacy. That supremacy had just been proven flawed. A ruler whose crown is seen to be made of glass cannot rule for long. What are your terms? Kaivel asked, the words seeming to cost it great effort. The negotiations began. They were not between a master and a servant. They were between two powers who had just discovered a terrible new balance. Human space would be recognized as a protectorate, not an annex. Technology restrictions would be lifted. Earth would have a seat, a small one, on the Galactic Council. The Mudding Railgun would be dismantled under joint observation, a symbolic gesture. The knowledge of how to build it would not be. When the link was finally severed, Jimin slumped into a chair. She felt empty. Deihayan put a hand on her shoulder. We did it, he whispered, though it did not feel like victory. It felt like stepping back from a cliff edge. No, Jimin said, looking at the starfield on a monitor. We just changed the game. She brought up the galactic feed. In a corner, a news stream from a defiant reptilian species called the Cathari was playing. It showed a crude animation of a rock hitting a hegemony ship. The title read, The Human Lesson, A New Physics of Power. The image spread. It was a meme idea, a virus. The initial human railgun had fired only once. But its echo was a sound that traveled faster than light, a sound of shattering glass. On 1,000 worlds, the galaxy's rulers, the Chirin, the others who had benefited from the old order, were reaching up, not to adjust their crowns, but to feel their weight, their fragility. For the very first time, they had not lost their crowns today, but they had felt them slip, and in the vast, silent galaxy, the sound of that slip was the only thing anyone could hear.